forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack making backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby Maine. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
The Sports Authority cashier that same day apparently identified Sweeting as the purchaser back in February, but today she could not identify him in court.
Okay, so who are the Miami boys? Well, the Miami boys originally started with me and a couple of guys that started going on the road, start going on the road. I'm original Miami boy and some other guys that really come up off that umbrella too, came off that tree too. That's really started the Miami boys and started going to different parts of the United States, getting money. And that's how, we started to form the Miami Yo Boys. So, we got a different swag in Miami. So, whenever we go somewhere, they were so fascinated with us. And, they pretty much gave us that name, the Miami Boy. Okay, and you guys are also called the Untouchables. No, that was, the Untouchables is one of my little homeboys, Oop, you know what I'm saying? That's a whole different story,
Ray Lewis's voice broke as he described his concern about his career after the deadly fight in Atlanta. He was, he says, trying to figure out exactly what had happened. He was talking to Reggie Oakley.
I said, man, what the hell you was doing? He was like, nothing. He said, I was just beating him. I said, man, you had to be doing something. I said, man, y'all need to cut this shit out. I said, you know what? I said, dog, this all on me now. I said, man, my career is finna end because of y'all tripping. You know what I'm saying? I said, I tried to stop this fight 3 or 4 damn times, and y'all kept going.
My thoughts stay dog. Nigga be on some bush and floss. I'm thinking getaway cars. Last case that I had, a nigga left no trace. The last case that you had, nobody seen your face. Nigga, round after round, clips and drums. You and Pete negotiate with a Tommy gun. Nigga don't speak the war. I get cinematic. De Niro, like heat camera. Automatics, talking family affair. Don't take it there. You're talking to a nigga who escaped the chair all across the country. My name be ringing. You gotta respect the drummer. You see me bringing. I'm the infamous. Who that? U&P. It's a contract hit. By who? The ZOE.
Even though it's debatable, most of us know the impact that the Miami boys would have on the city of Atlanta. But one member in particular would find himself in a fight for his life in the city long after the rest of the Miami boys had either left or been locked up. But his story starts in Miami in the mid-1980s, at the beginning of what would turn out to be a drug epidemic.
Miami SWAT teams spent the day converging on Liberty City's drug houses and shutting them down. At this location off Northwest 61st Street and 14th Avenue, police found an apartment all set up for drug dealing, complete with a sign advertising $25 for boy and girl, $25 for heroin and cocaine.
The guy that was inside that sells the dope was busy shuffling the dope down the sewer system. There's a pipe that's already out and exposed for this type of thing. If the police come in and raid it, they can put it down there. The reason he stopped was he got jammed up.
Too much dope in the pipe?
Yeah, too much dope in the pipe.
Miami police investigators aren't really sure how much money these drug houses made a day, but the pile of cash on this floor proves that the business was successful, and it's believed they sold several $1,000s worth of narcotics daily. A total of 15 people have been arrested so far as the Miami Police Department cracks down on its inner-city drug houses.
Hopefully this will either do one or two things: move them out of the city or push them further back into the holes so that at least they won't be as openly blatant as they are now.
Well, as history would show, a lot of dealers would decide to go with the first option. As law enforcement efforts would intensify in South Florida, a group that would be known as the Miami Boys would spread their operations onto cities and towns across the Southeast. From the mid-1980s through the 1990s, they would extend their crack network to urban centers and rural areas alike, affecting cities like Orlando, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Savannah, and eventually Atlanta, as well as smaller towns like Cairo, Waycross, Fort Valley, and even Griffin in Georgia. The expansion would be driven by a combination of high demand for crack cocaine, as well as the need to evade increased police pressure in Miami. Portrayed as the MKs in the Starz series BMF, the Miami Boys' influence was marked by a significant uptick in violent crimes that included drive-by shootings and homicides and the efforts to dominate the local drug market. This period of expansion not only spread the scourge of crack cocaine, but it would also introduce an unprecedented level of violence and fear into the communities that the group would target, specifically the housing project communities like Techwood, John Hope, and Herndon Homes.
This is Herndon Homes. It's a housing project with young and old people who are poor, many unemployed, living on welfare, and living in fear. 10-year-old Chandra Stevenson is one of them.
Are you afraid to live here?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Cause they be scared people out here.
There is no shortage of violence here. While shooting this story, this woman came charging out of her house carrying a butcher knife. And many of the people who live here are worried for the safety of their children. Raymond Granville's aunt fears retaliation for his talking of the violence.
Are you afraid to live over in this area?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Is that your mom? Oh, okay.
The fear is the result of heavy drug traffic here. It's a similar story on other public housing projects in Metro Atlanta. And where there are drugs, there are guns. In this case, there are drugs, guns, and children. The shooting of 6-year-old Danny Robinson came as no surprise.
The likelihood was great that it would happen sooner or later. It wasn't that long ago that the elderly lady was shot in a crossfire between two competitors.
In 1984, at only the age of 19, Joseph Kilo Sweeting would spend a year in jail for grand theft in Florida's Duval County. The very next year, he would be arrested after a car chase in Plantation, Florida, and plead guilty to grand theft auto charges and receive another year in jail. At 21, in 1986, he would be caught burglarizing a home that would result in another 2-year sentence for burglary, resisting arrest without violence, and 2 counts of grand theft. He would find himself back on the streets in 1988 at the peak of the crack plague, where, according to the news publication The Baltimore Sun, him and his brother Anthony Sweetney would be arrested in Miami on gang-related cocaine sale charges. It would be this incident that would link him to the notorious Untouchables gang, a group they would label as a violent street gang involved in drive-by shootings and narcotics trafficking. From the late 80s through the early 90s, he would spend several years in federal prison for 2 back-to-back possession of a firearm by convicted felon charges. By 1994, about a decade after the start of his criminal career, Kilo would be released to a halfway house, and though he didn't know it, just 6 years later, he would find himself in a fight for his life in the same city that his gang was said to terrorize, alongside a future NFL Hall of Famer.
The search of Ray Lewis's Owings Mills house lasted about 3 hours in the dead of night, carried out by Atlanta homicide detectives and a backup of Baltimore County detectives. We have now learned they were looking for a long list of possible evidence, documents, and information. Included were cell phone records, paperwork related to the rental of a limousine, and the names, addresses, and phone numbers of other people. We have also learned police thought they might find videotapes related to possible known associates of Ray Lewis. Something else they expected to find, folding knives, and awards, plaques, and other souvenirs from Super Bowl week in Atlanta. Finally, we've learned police were also looking for any clothing that might have blood on it.
Something in your life that, if there's something in your life that you know need changing, make sure you change it before God changes it. Because if he changes, you might not like it. So I had a lot of time to myself while I was incarcerated, you know. Then I found out sometimes you may find yourself in the wrong place simply at the wrong time. And you got a better chance of getting yourself in trouble if you find yourself around the wrong crowd and in the wrong place at the wrong time. So maybe what I went through actually saved my life.
How so?
Because of how comfortable I was with just thinking I was just a normal Joe. And the harsh reality is I'm not. You know, because of the media outlets and all these different things that exposes us in a whole nother light. You can't do the normal things that you want to do, even if you thought you can get away with it. Do you question yourself? Absolutely. But when you find time about yourself, I spent 15 days in jail. God said, can you hear me now?
It got so bad that prosecutors had to drop murder charges against Ray Lewis in the middle of the trial and offered him a plea deal. Lewis pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of obstruction of justice in exchange for testifying against Sweeting and Oakley.
A couple of weeks ago, the family of the incident in 2000, and I'm paraphrasing, but it goes something like this. While Ray Lewis is being celebrated by millions, 2 men tragically and brutally died in Atlanta. Ray Lewis knows more than Ray Lewis ever shared. What would you like to say to the families?
It's simple, you know. God has never made a mistake. That's just who he is, you see? And if our system, this is the sad thing about our system, if our system took the time to really investigate what happened 13 years ago, maybe they would have got to the bottom line truth. But the saddest thing ever was that a man looked me in my face and told me, we know you didn't do this, but you going down for it anyway. To the family, if you knew, if you really knew the way God works, he don't use people who commits anything like that for his glory. No way. It's the total opposite.
The epic football career of Ray Lewis almost ended 13 years ago outside the Cobalt Lounge nightclub in Atlanta, just hours after the 2000 Super Bowl.
Our source tells us the key witness provides crucial details about what happened before, during, and after the double stabbings in Atlanta. We'll start with the Cobalt Lounge, the nightclub where Ray Lewis partied after the Super Bowl. The witness says 3 men, including Lewis, and 3 women went into the club. Later, as the club closed, the entourage had grown. 6 men, including Lewis, and 6 women left the club. It was a short time later when the 2 men from Georgia were stabbed, apparently during some sort of altercation. According to our source, the key witness has now identified 2 people through pictures shown to him by Atlanta detectives as the suspects who actually did the stabbing. Neither of the people he's identified, our source says, is Ray Lewis. The witness, we're told, does not know the exact names of the 2 killers, only their nicknames.
I was never clear about how two guys end up in a fight with 2 other guys and 2 of them end up dead, right? No one's ever convicted, and how they ended up with stab wounds.
Lewis and one of his co-defendants nearly crossed paths in the parking lot of the jail. An hour before Lewis was released, Reginald Oakley, Lewis's acquaintance from Baltimore, turned himself in. Reginald, does he have anything to do with this?
Had nothing to do with it. He's going to be pleading not guilty. He's just here to turn himself in, and we'll answer all the questions in court.
Oakley's lawyer said his client's surrender has been in the works for days.
We take it he hasn't been on the run.
Oh, absolutely not been on the run. Come on. Perish the thought.
The Fulton County Sheriff today released the photos taken of Lewis and his co-defendants when they were booked. Joseph Sweeting and Oakley have yet to be considered for bond. It's doubtful, their lawyers say, they'll follow Lewis's path on that issue.
He doesn't have a $26 million contract with the Baltimore Ravens, so he's certainly not in the position Mr. Lewis is.
The testing attempted to turn up traces of blood of Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler, the two victims of the Atlanta case, on key pieces of evidence. Tonight, sources tell 11 News, traces of blood belonging to two of the suspects, Joseph Sweeting and Reginald Oakley, were found along with Baker's blood. The blood was found in the limo used by Ray Lewis's group, in a hotel bathroom where the limo stopped after the crime, and sources say possible traces of Baker's blood were also found in the hotel room used by Lewis and his friends. The evidence would suggest both Oakley and Sweeting were hurt in the fight after the Super Bowl party and somehow came in contact with the blood of Jacinth Baker, who was fatally wounded with a knife. The lab results leave a curious question concerning the other victim, Richard Lawler. Sources tell us none of his blood was detected anywhere on the items that were tested. That is sure to spark an argument from defense lawyers that someone else may have been involved with the double murder that has yet to be identified.
On February 11, 2000, Ray Lewis, Joseph Kilo Sweeting, and Reginald Oakley were charged with murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of Richard Lawler and Jacinth Baker. Less than 4 months later, in a move that seemed unprecedented at the time, the double murder charges against Ray Lewis were dropped on June 5, 2000. He would enter a guilty plea for only a misdemeanor charge of obstructing justice, and as part of his plea deal, he would agree to testify for the state, making a tight situation even tighter on his old friends.
Well, Matt, this case, of course, has been full of surprises. The biggest surprise yet is going to come in the morning. Sources tell us that prosecutors have reached an agreement with Ravens linebacker Ray Lewis. Under that agreement, he will plead guilty to a misdemeanor count of obstruction. Then, sources tell us, he is prepared to take the witness stand and testify to what he saw on the morning of the crime. Of course, the morning of the crime was after that Super Bowl party back in January. All other charges, the murder and assault charges that were against Ray Lewis, sources tell us, will be dropped. The punishment that Ray Lewis will receive, sources tell us, will be probation. He will be permitted to go back to playing football. Now, in no way does this admission that he is prepared to enter, this plea bargain, so to speak, in no way does it involve any admission by Ray Lewis that he in any way participated in the assault and the stabbing the morning after that Super Bowl party. This is strictly a plea bargain, a guilty plea to an obstruction count involving what happened after the fact. You will recall, ever since this case started, what has been hanging over this case involving Ray Lewis is that statement that he made to police. His own lawyer, Ed Garland, admitted in opening statements in this trial that he was not truthful in that statement. Just last Thursday, the jury heard that statement. They heard police talking about it. It has been one of the wild card pieces of evidence in this case against Ray Lewis. The obstruction charge that he is pleading guilty to involves that statement, his acknowledgement that he did not tell police everything he knew. So again, breaking details tonight. What will unfold here in the Fulton County Courthouse tomorrow, sources tell us, Ray Lewis will plead guilty to a misdemeanor count of obstruction. All other charges against him will be dropped. I'm Jane Miller reporting live in Atlanta. Matt, back to you.
Jane, a quick question. Why do you think Lewis and his attorneys have agreed to the plea bargain? Clearly, the case against Lewis was not that strong.
Clearly, the case involving any evidence that he participated in the assault and in the stabbing was very weak. There was only one witness in this case that took the stand, and that was an admitted con man who testified. He told the jury he saw Ray Lewis kicking someone. That was the only real piece of evidence offered that Ray Lewis was an active participant in the assault and in the stabbing. But again, that statement that he made to police the day he was arrested, some 10, 12 hours after, or 6 to 8 hours after the crime, has hung very heavily over this case. And what we are told by sources here is that what Ray Lewis's attorneys decided is when prosecutors came to them with this offer to plead guilty to this one misdemeanor count, it was a sure way for him to be able to return to his football career and not take any chances with how a jury might interpret his behavior after the crime and his behavior in which he did not tell police everything he knew. It was a dramatic day. Lewis provided the most detailed testimony of any witness about the fight that he says involved his friends and 5 or 6 other men. The real trouble, he says, started when Jacinth Baker hit Oakley with a bottle.
Once he hit over the head, in all honesty, all hell broke loose from that point.
Lewis said he saw Oakley and Baker punching each other. Then he used a dummy to demonstrate what he saw and named limo passenger Carlos Stafford as another participant.
And Carlos was running up from the direction of the limo. And as he got up to the limo, you know, Oakley was hitting him across the chest like this. And Carlos was kicking him.
Joe Sweeting, Lewis says, ran to help Oakley, but 2 men started dragging him. Sweeting himself took part in that demonstration.
I had him like this, drag him around the tree.
Lewis says he saw Sweeting throwing punches. It's what Sweeting may have said and showed Lewis later, after the crime, that might be most damaging.
He had the knife like in his hand like this. The blade wasn't out or anything like that, but he had the knife like this. And I said, damn man, what happened? He said, Lulu, every time they hit me, I hit them.
It's the first time anyone's put a knife in Sweeting's hand, though Lewis admits he didn't see anyone with a knife during the fight.
After pleading to the reduced charges and testifying against Kilo Oomph and Reginald Oakley, the former Baltimore Ravens linebacker would be the only person convicted, as in June of 2000, an Atlanta jury would deliberate for less than 5 hours before acquitting Joseph Kilo Oomph Sweetney and Reginald Oakley of murder and assault in the post-Super Bowl stabbing of Jacknique Baker and Richard Lawler. Y'all make sure y'all hit the red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all get in the comment box below. Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we need to tell, what we missed, what we got wrong, all of that. Y'all tapping with me directly on Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. And until the next bust down, y'all know how we rockin'. Shades Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.